episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell.
Hello, Cannabinoid Connect listeners. Have you ever thought about getting a medical card? The process can be intimidating and hard to navigate. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and 32 other states in the U.S. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I've mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. LeafWell only charges you if you get approved, so what do you have to lose? Visit their website at leafwell.com today and use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis. Risk-free. John McLeod, what's going on, man?
Hey, Kev, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing really, really well. I'm excited to talk to you tonight. Interesting background you have that I can't wait to share with the listeners, and what led you to your current role within the cannabis industry, which is co-founder and head of new markets at Cloud Cannabis. John McLeod, I get it. I get what you did there.
You like that? Slide that in there on you. You know, it's
Yeah,
it's funny
that
seeing
was
people.
different, but
Yeah. Well, and it's been mispronounced my entire life, so that's where it comes from. But ultimately, it's funny to watch people's faces when they get it, because now I get it.
Right, and
Yeah,
it fits cannabis, right? Because
no question.
sometimes you're flying high with some of these strains. So your head's in the clouds. You could be at times. Or
That's
floating,
right. We always say at Cloud Cannabis, we always say live higher. So that's exactly where we're trying to be, up in the clouds.
I love it, man. That's a great saying. Absolutely. I need to get like that on a bumper sticker or like.
Oh, we got swag with it on there. We'll get you some stuff.
I'm gonna have to hit you up for some swag.
I'm gonna send it. It's already on the way.
Word. Awesome, John. Well, before we get into your role and talk about Cloud Cannabis and even like the Michigan cannabis market as a whole, because I know that you're based in Detroit. That's right, Detroit?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Motor City.
Motor City, baby. And so, I think I heard you say on another podcast, where you threw this stat down and you said there's more cannabis jobs in Michigan than the police department, EMTs, and firefighters combined. Is that?
Yeah, I love that stat. And
yeah.
and that is in the legal regulated cannabis industry in Michigan. So that's taking that. You talk about the gray market or the black market, depending on who you're talking to, and there's quite a few jobs there as well. But it's a pretty profound stat, and I think it really shows the benefits of the cannabis industry as far as it directly relates to employment.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a shining example of a state that has gone adult use or recreational, right? And
Yep.
the economic and societal benefits that this industry is presenting. I mean, job growth, tax revenue for the state and local governments to put back for education, for infrastructure. I mean, all this stuff that I know a state like Michigan, in Detroit particularly, really needs. I mean, I grew up in New Mexico, which is on the same kind of path right now with legalizing and seeing these benefits unfold.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the ancillary positive side effects from the legal regulated cannabis market have been tremendous. You talk about job growth, are huge. Cloud's approaching nearly 300 employees ourselves at this point. But as an industry, as you pointed out, more than firefighters, police, and EMT combined. So those jobs are jobs that, I mean, let's be honest, if I were in Indiana, those jobs would not exist. So to think of how crazy it is, there's a bordering state that, those jobs do not exist in. You go just north of that border and you have, close to 60, 70,000 jobs in the regulated market. So it's huge. And then you also have the areas in which they allow us to operate in these municipalities in the state, are really kind of not necessarily the best retail or the best industrial areas. They kind of want us to fix up downtrodden areas, which is great, right? Because we can take, old beat up buildings and revitalize them, and we can help communities just kind of have like a rebirth with the amount of traffic that we bring in and the amount of business to the ancillary businesses around us. So, I mean, the positive effects of a legalized cannabis industry, a well-run legalized cannabis industry, are just out the window. It's amazing.
It's out the window, and it's undeniable, really. I mean, any politician or even civilian at this point that's kind of just sitting back, or citizen, excuse me, that's just questioning the efficacy of the plant medicinally. Sure, that's one thing, but the economic benefits, I mean, you can't deny them. It's happening all around us, especially if you're in a state that, like you said, neighbors a state that's got adult use. So I mean, with that said, we'll jump into Michigan even deeper in this episode. But John, let's start with your unique background, man. I mean, I guess nothing is regular anymore within the cannabis industry. There's more entrants that are coming in from different walks of life, different backgrounds. So, in your particular case, you were a police officer with Detroit PD, right?
That's correct. Yep, that's
So,
correct.
yeah. So tell us what made you want to become in law enforcement, and what your perspective was, as an active duty police officer in Detroit.
Yeah. So when I was I'm a born and raised Detroiter, Detroit public school kid. And when I was in seventh grade, I was walking home from the school bus, middle of the afternoon, and I got robbed for my winter coat. Got a gun stuck in my mouth for my winter coat. And it was a nice coat. It was back in the day when the starter coats were big. It was a Philadelphia Flyers starter coat. Wow, it was nice. So, it was a very traumatic event, obviously. But when the two police officers arrived in my home, they were very disrespectful. They were very demeaning. They were assholes, to be honest with you. And I, at that moment, at seventh grader, 12 years old, I said, I want to be a cop, and I want to make sure, there's no kid that ever feels the same way that I feel right now. And that I put my head down, and that's exactly what I did. So by the age of 20, I was on the job. And really, it was just an altruistic view of changing the world and righting all the wrongs and all that kind of stuff. But certainly as it relates to the experiences that people have with law enforcement. Now, my relationship with cannabis is no cannabis experience prior to my injury, but when I was a senior in high school, I wrote a paper on the legalization of cannabis. And so I was very progressive towards my approach to cannabis, even before becoming a police officer, even though knowing that was my goal. Born and raised in Detroit, cannabis is not something that.
I gotta pause you right there. Hold on.
Yeah.
Your senior thesis on
Listen,
the legalization of cannabis. Okay.
Yes, and one of these days, my teacher, Mr. Dean, is going to hear one of these, and I want to give him a shout out because it was the only A I got my senior year, but it was very important for me to be able to speak truth to something that was maybe even controversial at that time. I mean, obviously, this is well before any type of even medicinal legalization in the country.
Yeah.
But I made good points, and those points are still true today, even though we're dealing with a lot of the same issues. And it was a strong position of advocacy that was really born into me by my parents. My parents are they're very community oriented. They're very about the people around them and lifting everyone up. And that's just the way we were raised, right? So I saw a wrong, and I thought that there should be rights to it, and maybe I should have went in and been a lawyer or something like that. I could have had more impact on it, but so then, cannabis was just not really a thing in law enforcement. I mean, it wasn't a focus of anything we did. We weren't running around chasing people for dime bags and stuff like that. It was Detroit. We could barely keep up with the shootings or the robberies or that kind of stuff.
My question. I was going to be like, because, I've had other law enforcement guests, prior law enforcement and guests on who have now, converted, like Kyle Kazan, for instance. And he did, right? He was in an area where they would police, marijuana possession or whatnot. But I would imagine in inner city Detroit, that's the least of your worries, right?
Yeah, it wasn't anything we were concerned about. And at the end of the day, I mean, you already know based on what I told you with my senior papers that I didn't care about cannabis or people's use of cannabis. But there's just wasn't enough hours in the day for anyone to really put any type of enforcement behind that. So it was very rare, if ever, you'd ever see anyone get arrested for cannabis possession in Detroit. And this was back in the 90s. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where it was at. So it was just never really a thing. So as far as like kind of my approach to policing and its relationship with cannabis in particular, it just never existed. It just was never a thing. So when I got injured at work and, I had 4 surgeries and the city said, okay, that's enough. I tore my ACL, my MCL, and I shattered my kneecap. There were some kids that broke into a house. It was amazing. We actually showed up when they were still there, which is very rare to happen in Detroit, and chasing these kids down. And they were kids, 16-year-old kids down an alley. And I stepped on a sewer grate that was loose and it just snapped my knee. So, surgeries, they tell you, see ya, and here's some Oxycontin. Just keep taking it the rest of your life and don't stop. Oh, yeah. And by the way, we're going to have to increase it as you go along, too.
It's not working anymore because your body become immune to it. Oh, well, here's more dosage.
Yep.
When you've hit that threshold, they cut you off. And then, where do you go? You go somewhere else. You go on the street. You go look for heroin or whatever it is. Yeah.
And it was bad. I mean, it was something that we were, my wife and I were very resistant to initially, just because, I mean, this was long before the Dope Six of the world, or you really found out how evil this Oxycontin's Big Pharma is. But it just didn't feel right. But I could not treat my pain otherwise. I'm not, I wasn't going to turn to alcohol to treat my pain. I was kind of stuck. So, we relented and I tried. I said, okay, we'll give it a shot. And I thought it was fine. Kev, I thought everything was good. I mean, I really did. It
feels great when you're on it. I mean,
listen,
there's no denying it, right?
I was good. But fortunately, my wife, she keeps it 100. And she said, this is not working. You're not being a good husband. You're not being a good person, but, more impactful. And I know you'll feel this with your bundle of joy coming here in March, but I wasn't being a good father, and I just wasn't. And man, that hit me hard. You know what I mean? It really did. It shook me. And so that's it. So I was done. So I have a good friend of mine who's a doctor, has been in the medical cannabis space in Michigan since its inception, really on the forefront of medical cannabis in Michigan. And I hit him up and he was ready. He was like, come on, man, let's go. So
open arms.
Yeah, he was ready. And it sounds very cliche. And I'll use the visual reference. And for those of you not watching, listening, I'm snapping my fingers. It was that, man. It was just like that. And I was healed. I was healthy. I was back. I was myself. And, go back to the live higher. I was living the highest version of myself with cannabis without any side effects or dosage limitations. It allowed me to be the person who I was intended to be all along. And but for being in a legal state where there was a robust medicinal market at that time, I don't know what I would have turned to. But thankfully, Michigan is very progressive, and cannabis saved my life. And that was almost 13 years ago, and I haven't taken as much as an aspirin since then. And they told me I'd have to be on Oxycontin the rest of my life. So take that. Take that, right?
And what is serendipitous? Like, I mean, you had that connection, at the forefront of leading the charge in the medical space of cannabis, right, for Michigan. I mean, I'm sure, what was his methods? Like, did he exactly know kind of what to put you on, dosage, strain, like after kind of hearing what you've been going through and some of your ailments, or how did that process run?
Yeah, I think at that time it was really flying the plane as you're building it, right? I think they've kind of gotten more refined now. It's, back in that day in Michigan, there was a medicinal market. There were caregivers, which I was myself. So I grew plants as well for patients and myself later on. But there wasn't really a great retail outlet. There was no Cloud Cannabis in Michigan. So it wasn't until the adult use law came into effect in 2016 that really provided for retail outlets. I'm sorry, 2018, but really provided for retail outlets. So, it was more just kind of, are you doing vapes? Are you doing gummies? Or are you smoking flower? And for me, I've tried it all. I'm a flower guy, tried and true. It
Same.
just,
Yeah.
I like what I like. I know I know which strains are good for me. I know which terps are good for me, and I know, what the ride is going to be like, right? It's very predictable. And, that's kind of my mindset is I don't like a lot of contingencies. That's really, I came to the plant really as medicine strictly through flower, and there's been no looking back.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of similar in my experience as well. What terpene profiles and strains do you tend to gravitate to? Because I myself have kind of found that now that New Mexico is legal, I have family there. I'm traveling there quite often, so I'm able to really start to purchase what I know what I want, right? And I lean more toward like the limonene, the
Yeah.
pinene,
Mm-hmm.
and the myrcene. I really like the gassy, skunky stuff as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
like the fruity, colorful berry stuff. You know?
Yeah, and you read my mind. Same 100%.
Nice.
I'd say the biggest thing, certainly with the terps, those spot on. Those are the three that I lean towards. My biggest thing with is anything that's really heavy sativa dominant, like really strong sativa. I shy away from now, and this is just trial and error, but it makes me feel really anxious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a kind of an intense person, anyways, and if I get the wrong air quotes, the wrong sativa dominant strain, it'll make me more anxious. So that's really what I've kind of honed in is something that leans a little gassy and has those kind of piney taste to it. And I always say, if you like the smell, you'll like the smoke.
Right. Right. That's a great. And I didn't realize how. I mean, it's a basic statement, but it's so true. And someone told me that as well. And I was like, they said, lead with your nose. Like if you don't
Yeah.
like the way it smells, then you're not probably gonna like it. You know. So
Yep.
that made a lot of sense. Yeah. What so let's kind of switch some gears now that we got a sense of like your background. So now how first I want to hear about the inception of Cloud Cannabis, but after that I want to ask you how your past experiences have influenced your approach in how you lead in your current role as co-founder and head of new markets.
Yeah, and I think I could probably answer those both in one. I mean, as I said, when I entered the cannabis space as a medicinal patient, there wasn't really a retail outlet, right? And then so there was kind of these caregiver stores or these kind of gray market stores and stuff, which were great and were providing a service for a medical patient that otherwise wasn't permissible under the law. And really everyone kind of just left their hands off of it. So, um, but the problem is that you go into these stores and it would just be a wall full of jars with, orange banana grape monkey or, this really just weird names,
Right.
bad motor finger orange or something like that. And ultimately what it came down to is that's a very intimidating process. It's a very intimidating type of environment to walk into is for someone who's new to cannabis or cannabis curious or just wanting to see what it's all about. And that was one thing that at that time they were just, those stores were appealing just to cannabis users, which is great. You were providing a service to people who wanted that exact service, but there was nothing outside of that. There was no outreach. There was no attempt to bring in, the drinkers or the people that are on, pharmaceuticals to really have an environment where they could come in, learn,
Right.
understand, and really kind of have a hands-on guided approach to the cannabis experience.
It's so
It's so often.
sorry to pause you right there.
I'm sorry.
I was just say
Yeah.
it's so important, I think, to include those welcoming and educational experiences, particularly because, like, think about how many potential consumers we're missing out on, right? If you kind of lead
Mm-hmm.
with, like, there's a lot of people that are knowledgeable in this space because they've consumed for a while outside of, the legalization of their state. But we have to keep in mind that there's other entrants that are trying to come in, and like you said, intimidation is a huge thing. I mean, just stepping into a dispensary for the first time ever with no prior experience with cannabis is a whole thing for someone, right? And then adding on, like you said, the complexity of the names. And I mean, yeah, so I just wanted to caveat that with, it's just really important to do that.
No, it's a great point. And getting to exactly what you're saying, just getting to the door to come in is sometimes an insurmountable step for a lot of people.
Right.
So if we can get you in, we want to make sure you have a good experience. And what we were hearing a lot of is, I tried cannabis in high school, or or my grandma or I had these brownies at my grandma's party one time and everyone got really high and it was a really uncomfortable experience. So it was just what people didn't know, they didn't know. And that's our fault as a cannabis community to reach out to those people, to enlighten them and to bring them into the fray. So that's really where Cloud kind of came from, is having an experience that was based off of education, that was based off accessibility, and just cannabis for everyone, right? We want a place where anyone from the age of 18 as a qualifying medical patient to 118 can walk in and feel comfortable and feel loved on, but also feel like they're getting good information, and they're going out more educated than they came in. Because at the end of the day, an educated consumer is a quality consumer. And if they have the right experience, if you take care of them, it's just like any other business, right? They're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their relatives, and more people to bring into the fray. So that's really where Cloud was based off of, is just to have a relatable, approachable, experience from a retail level.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. And that point that you made about when there's consumers that come in kind of curious and they talk about, when I was in high school, I had a really bad experience. I hear that so often with even people, friends or family members, and what I tell them always is, well, you should consider trying it again, because you're a completely different person than you were when you were 16, right? Like, you're not,
No question.
like, so give it another shot. We're more educated now. Don't probably eat five brownies or gummies, or and see how it makes you feel. And if at that point, as an adult, an experienced adult now, where you say, nah, it's just not for me, then that's okay, right? But to compare it to an experience when your brain was still developing and you're still younger, I mean, I don't think that that's apples to apples comparison.
No, it's not, but it's something we discuss every day. And I mean, I think ultimately, you can point to the fact that, okay, maybe that brownie wasn't homogenized. Maybe you got 100 milligrams in your one bite and everyone else got no, and the brownie didn't do anything for me, but somebody else is slammed. I think the testing, I think that makes a big dent in that argument, because, the fact that all the products sold at our stores are lab tested and verified is I think a big piece, because ultimately you know what you're getting, right? You know that it's quality, that it's free of pesticides and mold and all that kind of stuff. And that's not something that, people were thinking about in high school 30 years ago. You know what I mean? They were just seeing how much that eighth was going to cost them.
Right. Yeah. Or how much, they could put in a brownie batch. So to get really messed up, right?
Yeah, right. Somebody was getting high.
Exactly. Well, you touched on one of the differentiators, I think, that, Cloud Cannabis brings to the table, and that's the educational piece and just bringing these curious people into the forefront. But what else would you say are key differentiators for Cloud, and, how are you leveraging those differentiators to succeed within the Michigan market?
Yeah, I think Michigan's really unique because in a lot of, there's 19 or 19 legal adult use states right now. So in a lot of those states, yeah, you have MSOs, right? Multi-state operators that have, stores in multiple states, and they're going really thin, but not really deep in any state. So, we've seen the pitfalls kind of that, one store in Massachusetts, maybe two stores in Michigan, maybe a store in New Mexico, whatever it is. Our goal was always just to be a very, very strong, deeply rooted SSO is what we call ourselves, single state operators. So I think our focus, we haven't been distracted by the shiny things. We understand that our focus is to deliver a top-notch retail experience to the consumers in Michigan or from out of state that travel here with a valid ID. And that's really what we focused on doing. So when other operators have looked out of state or looked to enter other type of partnerships and stuff like that, we've kept our head down and just continued to build organically. We're still self-funded, so we're just doing this on our own. We're bootstrapping it. The same guys that started this company are the same guys that are showing up to work every single day. Wow. We're just committed. It's a family business, and we run it as such. And I think that's a differentiator too, because, I mean, we care about each other individually and each other's families first and foremost. And then obviously we put that same amount of energy into the business. So I think that helps. And then I also think because we're vertical, so we have a 70,000 square feet of cultivation in Kalamazoo where we grow some really great flower, including some Wonder Brett flower with our partnership with Wonder Brett, which is a great brand, and doing really well in the state. And then we also have our own processing facility where we make Mitten Extracts, which is one of the top extraction brands in the state. So we can control our own supply chain, which allows us to kind of avoid the ups and downs of the wholesale market. But it also allows us to be, agile to consumer wants and needs, right? So if there's a new thing, like we just came out with a live resin disposable vape, and it went crazy in the market.
Those are my favorite, man.
It's crazy. It's live resin, it's disposable, it's so easy to use, very, very clean, no fake flavors or any of that kind of stuff. It it tastes like flour. And that hit. And then next thing you know, we hear people, now we're launching a 3-gram disposable. You know what I mean? So which I just is crazy to me, because I'm a flour guy, right? But I won't have any problems taking out 3 grams, in an afternoon flour. So so really it's just having that ability to be agile, to move, to kind of not be held to what the market is telling us to do, just kind of be, ahead of things, is really, I think, what sets us apart. The other thing is we just care. You know what I mean? We give a shit. We want to win. We want to be successful. We want to do the right thing. And we want to, at the end of the day, stand for something that we can really be proud of. And, as you recognize the name, similar to the brand name, I mean, at the end of the day, when this is all said and done, I have my name to stand on, and that's not going to change regardless of what business I'm in, whether it be law enforcement or cannabis or what have you. So we really pride ourselves on just giving 110% every single day for the business, for the betterment of each other, and for the betterment of the cannabis industry.
Yeah, no, I love that mindset and that mission that y'all have set forward. And you know, self funded, vertically integrated. I mean, what a huge advantage, right? I mean, and I love the hyper focus that you said, the single state operator. I mean, you wanna focus on the state that that you guys, the company was born in, basically. I mean, y'all are from there, you're natives, and just making sure that you're doing the best of your ability in that regard. Talk to me about Cloud's retail footprint throughout the state.
Yeah, so we have 9 stores open right now, and the Michigan, we always use our hand to, for this is what the state looks like. So we're pretty spread out across the state, both on the west side and the east side. Focus certainly on 70% of the population, which is in the Metro Detroit area. But we're expanding west as far. We have 2 stores in Grand Rapids that we're opening in Q1 of next year, and really excited about that because Grand Rapids is one of the fastest growing communities in the entire country. But certainly continue to be on the rise in a very cannabis friendly community. So our goal is just to, no matter if you're up north or you're out west or you're down south in the state, that there's a Cloud Cannabis close by that can serve you. And at the end of the day, if we're lucky, maybe we'll have a big enough footprint where we could just deliver to the entire state from one of our stores.
Yeah. I mean, are there any particular growth points that you want to call out specifically that you're proud of that y'all accomplished in 2002, the fiscal year?
Yeah, I mean, I think just continue to keep our head down. Certainly we gained quite a bit of traction on our wholesale market. I mean, big improvement on our wholesale market this last year, which was nice for us, right? Because ultimately we can sell a certain amount of products out of our own stores, which is great. We can supply our shelves, but our shelves are very diverse, right? Because we're not the only ones making really good products in Michigan. So there's a lot of good cultivators in Michigan. There's a lot of old school caregiver guys that are growing some amazing flower or making some really great concentrates. So, having a diverse product selection is really huge. So it's been nice to be able to penetrate other stores with our wholesale market. And then just the continued growth of retail. I mean, we opened our first store in June of 2020 during the height of pandemic, and we're 2.5 years later, 9 stores open, and I have, 2 getting ready to pop here very soon. So again, the focus on just having a really good, solid footprint, right? We're not in every city. We're taking a very selective approach of what communities we're entering because, we're not just another brand, right? We want to be the brand.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I have to ask, right? Because you did touch on and I echoed it, the hyper focus being in Michigan. I mean, but as head of new markets, are there plans for expansion outside of the state? And if not, I mean, what about within the state? What are you really focused on in terms of expansion in the state of Michigan?
Yeah, so I mean, out of the state, like I said, we're really focused on Michigan. So, I mean, there's smarter people behind me that are, potentially looking at other options in the future. But my head's solely down, focused on the Michigan market. And I think the one thing that is just a glaring hole in our portfolio is that border store. We border Ohio, we border Indiana, and we border Wisconsin up in the UP. So those are three states that Ohio has a very minimal medicinal market. Indiana has nothing. Wisconsin has nothing. So the stores that are on the stores that are on those borders are doing just amazing numbers, which is great. So let's take it from the retail perspective. Great. You go to some of these stores and all you'll see is Ohio plates or Indiana plates or Wisconsin plates or Kentucky plates or,
Right.
I mean, there's people that come from all over, which is great, right? You're talking about from a retail perspective, it's great business. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of commerce. These really small towns are getting these huge tax benefits from these stores popping up, jobs, etc. Other businesses opening up to support them. That's great. But then think about it from this perspective, Kev. If I live in Wisconsin and I'm strung out on Oxycontin, I can't buy legal weed anywhere.
Right.
So how am I supposed to switch off of pharmaceuticals to the flower so that I can live my best life? I can't do it legally in that state, and that's a damn shame.
Yep.
So there was a time when I looked at the border stores a little bit differently, but now I see them for what they are. We're providing a service to an otherwise legal patient or customer at that point in time. So far be it for me to let an imaginary border, stop them. So really a border store is huge for us. We don't have one yet. There's some new markets that are coming along that we're working hard at, but that would be, kind of the cherry on top for our portfolio. Would really be one of those stores. And I'll take it on either Wisconsin, Indiana, or Ohio. I love them all.
Just roll the dice. Yeah, it doesn't
I'll
matter.
take them.
And that is such a great point. Like there is dual benefit, right? Of course, from the retail sales, the commerce perspective, but also, like you said, those patients and those people that truly need the medicine because they have no other option. I mean, Texas is a perfect example of that.
Oh,
I mean, I mentioned earlier, the state of New Mexico. I'm part owner for a luxury pre-roll brand out there, and we're talking to the Sunland Parks, like these border towns that border Texas, because I mean, I would say almost half of the revenue that's generated per month in New Mexico right now has to be from outside of the state because there's only so many residents within the state of New Mexico. So
right,
the
right.
math just doesn't make sense. So
Yeah,
um, it's awesome
yeah.
to
Well,
see, and
Texas.
hopefully it wakes up states that are missing out on that opportunity.
Oh, I think it definitely will. And you bring up Texas. This is a great example. I mean, one of my marketing guys was in Texas last week for something. I think he was there with his girlfriend or whatever. But he said everyone he met when he told him that he worked in the cannabis industry, he were like, "Oh, what? What is that like?" And they were all shocked. And I guess it's for us. I mean, it was really kind of I lose perspective because in my circles, in my community, in my state, the cannabis isn't looked on like that. I mean, people are not shameful or hiding their cannabis use or working in cannabis or their advocacy for cannabis. But in a state like Texas, they were shocked to hear that somebody actually made a living in the cannabis industry in a marketing capacity. So, very blessed to be in Michigan, in a state that really just has embraced cannabis and has shown the amazing things that have come from it.
Yeah. Texas is a weird one when it comes to cannabis because you've got Austin, like first off, all the major cities, like there's consumption happening because there's all kinds of nomads
Sure.
that like are
Yeah.
just flocking in. They're not natives, right? So these are like young
Mm-hmm.
professionals, young kids that consume. And
Mm-hmm.
particularly Austin. Like Austin's
Yep.
very progressive in that sense. But like if you go to smaller Texas towns, or if you're like in the suburbs, I'd say of larger cities, that's where it gets a little like squirrely in terms of like not I wouldn't say full out judgment, but like surprised. Like
Yeah.
Oh, really? Like you're in the cannabis industry, or like I'll play golf with some like people where we get paired with others, and they'll just ask you what you do, and I'm like, I have a cannabis podcast, and my buddy Jesse Kearns, he runs like a hemp lab, and he's like,
Y-
even the hemp industry, they're like, really, they're
Yeah.
curious a little bit. So we've got a ways away from like an educational and awareness standpoint, and sadly, the Texas government, like, I mean, Texas is the seventh largest GDP in the world. So
Hmm.
the politicians have taken this stance, like we don't need the revenue, we don't want it. They're just taking that quote unquote moral stance, and it's really a detriment to the hemp industry and everyone that needs the medicine at this point.
Well, there's no question, and it's a boom for the pharmaceutical industry because in states that have some form of legal cannabis, so this is medicinal and or adult use, there's a 38% reduction in opiate use and opiate prescriptions. So you're talking, I mean, let's say 4 out of 10 individuals that can, treat their pain like I have with cannabis as opposed to using pills. That's a win for everyone. And it's too bad that they're not there yet, but they'll be there. There's no turning back now. I mean, the tide has turned, so to speak. So they may be late to the party, but they're going to be joining us one of these days soon.
Right, exactly. And you said everybody wins in that instance except for the pharmaceutical industry, right? So that's kind of which.
And listen, I think we can all pray on that downfall. And ultimately, what it comes down to is they've been eating a lot for a long time here. And it's time for them to move out of the way. And I have personal experience about it. I mean, I would not be here. I certainly would not be here on this podcast, but I don't know if I'd be here on this earth right now if I stayed on those pills. And that's pretty terrifying to think. But if you flip that, say there's so many people out there that we can save from that type of downfall with cannabis, it just fuels the passion every single day to get them all. I want them all because the more we can get under, the cannabis umbrella, the better world we'll be living in.
Yep, preach, my man. Exactly. No, I couldn't
Mm.
agree more with what you just said, and yeah, it's a truly a certainly a better alternative. And that stat you mentioned, what 38% of
38%.
opioid reduction. Yeah, I mean, come on,
Yeah.
no brainer.
Yeah. And in Michigan, it was 41%. So I mean, 38% is the average. You know what I mean? That's a sizable. That's a real number. Those are real people.
Right, absolutely, yeah, and I mean, it's just happened for so long now. I mean, didn't they call it the opioid crisis? Like it was a decade-long crisis. I mean, since I've been in high school, opioids have been around and they've been a real issue. So it's about time we kind
Yep.
of address this issue with other alternatives, right? Um,
No question. No
so
question.
John, as we wrap up, what are you most looking forward to in 2023? What are you focused on for Cloud Cannabis Company? And yeah, what's in store?
Yeah. So I mean, really, 2023, just keep our head down, continue to work hard. The Grand Rapids stores are going to be really big for us. It's a big, sizable market share on the west side of the state that we're going to be picking up. So that's going to be huge. I also think, really just penetrating more retail stores on the wholesale side is going to be very important for us too. And then just obviously staying lean and mean. I mean, with the 280E tax laws, it's really tough sledding in the cannabis industry financially if you're not smart about the way you do things. And when you're spending your own money to do them, you got to be extra smart about it. So I think ultimately just, doing same thing we are, continuing our good, strong pace and continue to establish ourselves as the leading single state operator in Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. Why try fix something that's not broken, right?
Yeah, and listen, there's no secret sauce here. None of us are like rocket scientists, right? We're just passionate. We're trying to do the right thing, and we're not reinventing the wheel, but we are blazing a new trail. I mean, this cannabis industry is ever evolving. What do people say? Dog years is what they call it, or something like that.
Yeah.
But it is. It's constantly changing. The legislation is changing. The rules are changing. The licensing, it's all changing as we go. So it's just really just to make sure you're on top of everything, agile and focused on doing the right thing with the right people.
Absolutely, man. Well, John, you're full of wisdom and experience and insight, man, and just I really enjoyed talking with you today. It was a blast. And yeah, I mean, do you want to leave the audience with anything, with some last final words of wisdom before we hang
Uh,
up here?
wow, no pressure. I would just say, just be nice to each other. I mean, I guess that's that's really my final words of wisdom is just be nice to each other. And, I mean, we're all in this thing together. So, just live the highest version of yourself and be kind. That's really what I have to say. And I appreciate the opportunity, Kevin. You know, I like to watch your podcast because I love to watch the movement of the dog in the background, and I didn't get much movement tonight. Uh, so I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Absolutely, man. No, he Toby's in the back over there. He's got a second set of earphones on, so he's just listening, closing his eyes, you know.
Outstanding. Oh, so I'm putting him to sleep. Okay, sorry, Toby. Sorry, buddy.
No. He's just enjoying it. He's loving it.
Good,
So it was a great
good.
conversation, John, and we definitely need to run it back, my man. As you know, Michigan is just like the country. There's 19 states that are adult use, and we're just infants in this industry that's growing. So let's keep continuing the conversation, and I'd love to have you back on in the near future.
Yeah, no question. Love to have you out in Michigan one day too, Kev.
I'll definitely look you up, my man. I got to get out there. I have a really good friend that went to Michigan State, and he's from the Michigan area. So, yeah,
There you go. Sparty on, buddy. Sparty on.
that's right. Shout out to David Donaldson.
There you
All
go,
right,
David.
John. Thanks again, man, and thanks you all for listening.
Thanks,
Bye.
Kev.